Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm just going to lay this out live, do something a little wacky. I'm going to read something I wrote. This is going to be not the technology, really sharp thing I'm going to do here, but I'm just going to go ahead and record it and then put it up on the site. Because some of you people are reaching out to me like, where are you? So I want to put this for you, even though nobody's on here right now, maybe live. I'm going to read this. I wanted to connect with you guys, especially who are dealing with the holidays and this situation that's coming up for you. I thought this would be interesting. So this is kind of my story I wrote out. Just going to read it. It's mid-August, a couple years ago. The day was hot and it was about to get a lot hotter. I picked her up at JFK as we drove. We spoke about her work trip, about her friends who just married, about a friend who just married a tech tycoon, and how our kids were doing at summer camp. I'm even getting emotional right now just reading this. A mile from our beach rental, she asked me to pull over near a small beach. Some extra time together before seeing the kids again. Cool, she was cool. That would be cool. It's not easy even now, man. She got right to the point, but not exactly the one I expected or desired. And I'm doing this for you guys to show that where I've been and that there are other people there. I want a divorce. I stared at it, a seagull suspended over the water, then back to her. Let's make this easy and stay friends, she added. The blood drained from my brain. I nodded like a robot. Am I awake? Is this really happening? I glanced back at the seagull who disappeared over the ridge. I was conscious enough to nod, a fleeting energy to speak, to push back on her about this flash flashed inside of me, but I knew it would be pointless, so I just nodded again. Once her mind was made up, there was no convincing otherwise. 10 years of marriage detonated with 3 words. I'm reading this just to share with you, because I think a lot of times you just want to know there are other people going through this, and unfortunately there have been and are and will be. Why don't you drive back to the house, I said, and see the kids, give me a little time. When she drove out of sight, I lay down on the sandbar, or the sand, unable to get my breath under control or stop spinning. A tiny part of me was separate, watching this pile of drama unfold. This is important. Back to that later. But I was suffocating, right? Loss, waves of panic, fear, loneliness, crash fast and hard. Of all the people to get divorced, man, I thought I would be the last. You know, no cheating, out late drinking, doing stupid crap. How off base I was. Maybe it was the arrogance or stupidity or both. A few nights sleeping in my car, dodging parking cops, I finally washed up in a cockroach motel that reeked of curry and kitty litter. We're fast forwarding now from that first part. One night driving back from work, I was pulled over for out-of-date registration. Actually, I think it was a taillight or something. The cop looked at my back seat piled with clothing and all this stuff, and I just looked at him and said, I'm in the middle of a divorce, I offered, as if that had anything to do with anything. He nodded at me and told me to have a good night as he slipped his ticket book back into his jacket. An ancient unwritten bond between guys had been activated for that small piece of time. Too many of us know this path and too well. I could see it in his eyes. I remember that. That was crazy. Again, I'm just laying this down. I don't even know if anybody's watching right now, but watch it when it's up on the site, on the YouTube channel. Later that night, I glanced at the emptied 6-pack of Amstel Light bottles I knocked down, then caught my image in the mirror. I didn't like the vampire I saw staring back at me. I was flabby and pale. My eyes were like marbles, dull marbles. Somewhere inside, I vowed to myself, I'd build back up out of this freaking mess. I just had no idea how I would do this. Inside, I knew this was about marriage, but also more than just a marriage breakdown. This was about me and my limitations as a person who had let life pass by and been out to lunch for a lot of it. There was no more hiding now that this thing had blown up. The divorce was a trigger that blasted open the rusted door to my limitations I had to face. Yeah. Now, a lot of you guys don't, you have a hard time. But for me, yeah, this showed me like I had my head up, right? So it was a double level for me. Moving forward was not a rocky story. I fell on my face all the time. I allowed anger, guilt, and self-pity to drag me down. The biggest challenge initially was the guilt of turning our kids' world upside down. You know how I feel about that. I know people disagree on this, but to me, there's no excuse. We bring kids into this world and should give them a happy, stable place. Say what you want, but we screwed them. All I could do now is to demonstrate to my kids everything would be okay. What does that mean? We've talked about this. I never badmouth their mom to them. And no effing way am I going to let them down by crumbling, right? I would stand tall even if I felt 3 inches tall. That's it, man. Welcome to the party. You signed the contract. You brought these kids in the world. It's man up. Man up. Maybe low self-esteem held that feeling off, or I was able to accept this ending. Hold on, let me back up. Okay. Interestingly enough, I didn't feel embarrassed by this failure. Maybe it was low self-esteem that held that feeling off, or I was able to accept this ending at some level better than I imagined because I had given it my all. That was interesting. Okay, so I joined a CrossFit gym, which ironically seemed to be filled with divorced dads. I got in solid shape, but there was still a hole. I was stronger, but still fleeing. Started listening to Michael Singer and Eckhart Tolle and others. Their message of letting go and surrender appealed to me. Even amidst all the fighting and lawyers and garbage. I knew it was my only way out of this mess, and more importantly, to set a good example for the kids. I kept thinking of the martial arts student who was forced to wait outside the dojo through wind, rain, and snow, ignored by everybody before he's allowed inside, sometimes for years. That became my frame. It's not an approach everyone enjoys. You have to endure a lot of crap and attacks on your character. But in the end, brother, I can tell you from experience, it is it's the path. Somebody's watching, cool. I say that with confidence because I've lived it, but even if I didn't think about you, all right, let me back up. I say this with confidence because I've lived it. If you imagine yourself on a deathbed and your kids come by to say goodbye, in that moment, when you're like full of tubes and everything, you're surrendering, and that's the point, that energy. That's why it's good to practice that time sometimes, end of life. Ultimately, all things are surrendered. So let's move on. So what we're talking about here is still I fall short every day. But I think by reading that, it just shows you again, things happen, and I've been there, other people have been there, and that connection alone sometimes makes people feel better. And I've gotten emails, people asking for that kind of camaraderie. So where I am today with family and this, the other person is light years away where we were. So we go through these stages. And I think we need to give that space, the guilt and fear and whatever might come up for you. So I think I'm just going to leave it at that. There's no great lessons here other than connection and camaraderie. And to let go, I would say, is the main thing. All right? So whatever the purpose of me reading that, I feel like shit. Thank you. I'm just kidding. Sort of. I don't like reliving that, but for you guys, I'll do that. And obviously, we still want to surrender and keep breathing through things. All right. So that's for you. And I'm doing a lot of cold plunging and Wim Hof work. I've just got my teacher's certification in Wim Hof breathwork and cold plunge. Sorry, the computer's going nuts. So you'll see more of that. I think you'll see more of that. And I'd like to refer to you guys to that channel when I get it set up, because it's the same thing we talk about here. All right, hope this is useful. See you guys.